Hello and welcome to Oakville on Deck. My name is Tim Caddigan, Senior Director of Programming at Cogeco and past Chair of the Oakville Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors. In this three-part series, we'll be hearing from our municipal, provincial, and federal government representatives. Up on deck, we have Stephen Crawford, MPP for Oakville, and Effie Triantafilopoulos, MPP for Oakville North Burlington. Before we begin, I'll pass the screen over to Matt Wickham, Vice President and General Manager of Ontario for Cogeco. Matt?
Thank you, Tim, for the introduction. At Cogeco, we're happy to be longtime partners with the Oakville Chamber of Commerce. We share similar mandates where it comes to serving businesses within Oakville because both the Chamber and Cogeco are passionate about growing local businesses and connecting them to the world. Cogeco serves more than 600 communities in Ontario and Quebec, but our footprint isn't the large metropolitan areas. Our communities, our markets, are the size of Oakville, Milton, and Kingston. Providing a world-class network in each of these communities is important to us, but being local and active in the community, well, that's equally important. I want to give you a couple of examples. Since the start of the pandemic, we've made donations to the Oakville Fair Share Food Bank, and we dropped off individual treats for all staff at Halton Healthcare. We supported some of our local restaurants by purchasing lunches and dropping them off for staff at a few of our long-term care facilities. In fact, just recently we purchased lunches from Monaghan Sports Pub and Grill and delivered them to the staff at the Northridge Long-Term Care Home. We will be delivering lunches to other long-term care homes in Oakville later this month to continue to show our appreciation for the care that the staff at these homes have shown for our most vulnerable. Connectivity has been more important than ever this past year, which is why Cogeco continues to be focused on connecting underserved and unserved homes and businesses, while supporting the federal government in its objective to connect all Canadians by 2030. Recognizing we have a key role and responsibility to contribute to economic development, Cogeco has committed over $1 billion over the next 4 years to build on our powerful fiber network. I want to thank the Oakville Chamber of Commerce for today's timely event that centers around connecting, communicating, and building community. I now have the pleasure of introducing two of Oakville's elected officials who will speak to this, Stephen Crawford and Effie Triantafilopoulos. Stephen Crawford was elected as the Progressive Conservative MPP for Oakville in 2018. He has since introduced two private members' bills, both focused on protecting consumers. Engaged in the community, Stephen is a member of the Oakville Chamber of Commerce, 100 Guys Who Care Oakville branch, and the Royal Canadian Military Institute, and a vocal supporter of Plan Canada's Because I Am a Girl campaign. Stephen currently holds the position of Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Infrastructure. Effie Triantafilopoulos was elected as Progressive Conservative MPP for Oakville North Burlington in 2018. Effie serves as the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Long-Term Care, the Vice Chair of the Standing Committee on Justice Policy, a member of the Standing Committee on Estimates, and a member of the Select Committee on Emergency Management Oversight. Effie is a senior counsel at Vassaslaw LLP and continues to serve on the board of the World Hellenic Interparliamentary Association. Please join me in welcoming both Stephen and Effie.
Welcome, Effie. Welcome, Stephen. Nice to see you both.
Thank you for having us.
It's been quite an unprecedented year, something we would never have anticipated. Can you share some of your observations and insights on how the provincial government has managed the pandemic up till now?
Sure, thanks, Tim. There's certainly a lot to talk about and not a lot of time given the magnitude of what's happened here in Ontario and indeed throughout the world. We've been through a tough 13, 14 months at this stage. We've had obviously a global pandemic, part in Ontario here, which has affected many people. We've unfortunately had to close many businesses, suspend a lot of outdoor and indoor activities. So we've been through a tough time. Having said that, I do believe there is light at the end of the tunnel. We are getting vaccines now. We have almost 50% of the adult population in Ontario vaccinated. And obviously this lockdown appears to be working. Cases have certainly plateaued and dropped a little bit. We'd like them to get a little bit lower, but I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I think in terms of the government, we've been working cooperatively with both municipal, regional, and federal governments in order to get vaccines, in order to supply them and put them in the arms of people, which ultimately is going to end this crisis. I do think we're on the tail end of it. And no doubt it's been a tough time on everybody throughout the province. It's been challenging for students not having to go to in-class schools on a daily basis for much of the time. It's challenging for businesses. It's challenging for families. It's challenging for us as elected officials. This has not been easy. And many decisions that our governments had to make were between a rock and a hard place. So every decision has consequences. We take them very seriously. They're very heavy, but certainly the people of Ontario will get through this. And I'm very optimistic. Not only is there light at the end of the tunnel, that we will come out of this stronger than ever. So in the weeks and months ahead. So a lot to talk about, obviously, in a very short time, but I think we're on the right path at this point.
I think that it's fair to say most people would say that Canadians have been pretty resilient, that they've really responded to government requests for whatever it may be, and that's been great. I'm sensing things becoming a little darker now with people getting frustrated with it. So I won't hold you to anything, but when you talk about light at the end of the tunnel, what do the next 6 months look like to you, Stephen?
Yeah, and understand this is my opinion at this stage in time, and things are changing on a daily and weekly basis. But the way I see it right now, I think 6 months from now life will be somewhat back to normal. I mean, we'll have basically everybody in Ontario and Canada vaccinated, and ultimately that's what's going to end the crisis. The social distancing is a temporary measure that we've had to put into place, and obviously in order to keep our hospitals from being overburdened. And I can tell you right here in Oakville, our hospital is full to capacity. We don't have extra room right now. The reason we've needed to put these measures in place is not that everybody that gets COVID is affected to the point where they're seriously ill and die, but it's a significant enough number that it's filling up our hospitals. Our hospitals are full. If we did not take some of these strong measures, I can tell you it would not be a pretty sight right now. So we've had to take these tough and decisive measures in order to save people and save people from potential problems that could have occurred. It's not only what's happened, it's what could have happened. Imagine if we didn't take some of these measures and a family member got in a car accident. The hospital, the ICU is full. Where are they going to go? There's no doctors. We only have so many doctors and nurses. There's only so much capacity. Those are the tough measures we've had to put into place. But as I say, I do think we're on the right track. I hope this summer will be starting of loosening restrictions. I think it'll look semi-normal. It's not going to look like it did 2 years ago, but I think we can start hopefully getting some patios open, people getting out, outdoor activities. And I think going to the fall, hopefully, school will be opened up as per normal or relatively normal. And 6 to 12 months from now, we can hopefully start moving past this as much as we can. But, COVID may be here to stay. It may be that we'll have to get a yearly flu-like shot for this. But in the end, we're going to have to learn to perhaps live with it to some extent, but life will return to normal. So I think within 6 months, I think we're going to be relatively back to normal.
Well, let's hope. Effie, your government recently released its 2021 Ontario budget, the Ontario Action Plan, protecting people's health and our economy. What in the budget are you most proud of, and what do you think Oakville businesses and residents will benefit most from?
Thank you, Tim, for that question, and it's really a pleasure to join you today. And I, like Stephen, am optimistic about what the next few months will hold. As you may know, we've actually exceeded about 6 million doses of the vaccine in the province of Ontario. So I think that we're well on the way to being able to see some real light at the end of the tunnel. But in the meantime, it was important for us to be able to support our people and help our small business community be able to weather this unprecedented crisis that we've been facing. So the kinds of tools that we've put at the disposal of our small business community includes a second round of the Ontario Small Business Support Grants Program. And that means that small businesses are able to apply for anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000 for eligible recipients. And what we did in this last budget is we actually doubled that. So applicants that were successful in the first round did not need to apply again. They automatically would receive that. And that will help about 120,000 small businesses in our province. It's about an investment of $3.4 billion. In addition, in the last budget that we had in November, we had reduced electricity prices for medium-sized and large industrial and commercial employers. saving them about 14 to 16% on average on their actual electricity bills. So we wanted to make them more competitive, particularly in the North American environment, where we see some very competitive electricity rates in the US. We also added, we actually made permanent the employer health tax exemption from $490,000 to $1 million. So this means it's an additional relief of 90% for employers who will not have to pay EHT, saving them a total of about $360 million for this year itself. And then we also lowered the business education tax rates for about 200,000 employers, which applies essentially to 94% of all businesses in the province. As you may also have heard, that we recently added three COVID sick days in addition to the 20 offered by the federal government for a total of 23 days. These are meant to be paid by the government so that there would be no financial burden on the small business owner to have to pay these sick days. Beyond that, we also did something which I think is also going to be very, very helpful to those people who are actually looking for a job and wanting to retool. We've introduced a new Ontario Jobs Training Tax Credit for this year, which means that we will be providing up to $2,000 per recipient towards 50% of eligible expenses. So this will also support about 230,000 people getting back into the job market. These are all just some of the examples of what we've done to help us, our small business community. We also have done other things, particularly to support families and childcare. There's the childcare benefit. It totals about $1.8 billion since last March, where essentially with this budget, we've doubled it for $400 per child. And for families that might have a child with special needs, it's $500. We've also got our CARE tax credit for 2021 to support parents with the cost of childcare, because we know how costly that is. And then that will probably mean an increase from $1,250 to $1,500 on average for each family, reaching about 300,000 families. And then finally, the Ministry of Education has invested 300,000 new childcare spaces. And we estimate that we're already about 20,000 there. So we're well on our way, I think, to being able to support our people, our small businesses, our families, in order to be able to get through this terrible pandemic.
It's a lot to digest. Both of you, I'm sure, have had pretty busy times when you're with your constit offices. How is that going? Are you getting a lot of well, you can't have traffic, but a lot of inquiries, a lot of need for information, that sort of thing, Stephen?
Yeah, Tim, obviously our office has been busy during this time. Now, we don't have in-person visits, but we do get emails, calls, and you know, we have a lot of people that send in emails that, quite frankly, think there should be no lockdown. We have people that are saying that. We have other people that are sending in saying it should even be stricter. People should basically not be allowed to leave the house. So there's a real divergence of opinion. I think that's the issue with this, that everyone has an opinion on this, a strong opinion. It's difficult for a government to navigate this, but I think we are taking the right approach where, you know, we're trying to balance businesses, governments, people having, you know, somewhat normal lives in a very difficult environment. So people are emotional right now. People are upset in many cases, but in the end, I think most people sort of fit somewhere in there in the middle, where they recognize governments do have to take actions, but obviously people need to be able to get outside. They need to be able to go and get food. We're trying to keep businesses open where we can, but they understand the magnitude of how the hospitals are. So there's no question everyone's got an opinion on this. This is very difficult. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, every decision is you know, between a rock and a hard place, literally, as a government. But I think in the end, we're going to look back and say, for the most part, we did a good job, and we're going to come out of this stronger than ever. And I think a lot of people do recognize that. Again, having said that, there are divergent opinions out there.
Well, there certainly are those. Effie, how about you and your team? How's the reaction at the constit office?
Well, and Stephen, I think put it very, very well, that for every person that we hear from who is concerned about the lockdowns. There's also another person I hear from who says, please keep our safety protocols in place. This is a health crisis and we need the government to act responsibly in that way. So it's very much a balancing act. As you know, we're working virtually as well, other than when we're on cohort and working downtown at Queen's Park. Our constituency office is closed, but working virtually. So we're responding to emails, we're taking calls. I do a lot of virtual meetings with constituents and trying very much to support them. For example, with the small business grant, there have been some glitches here and there where an applicant will have made an application and has, for some reason that they can't figure out, the application has been denied. So we've been working hands-on directly with the ministry to be able to be sure that if it's a technical glitch, that they've done something wrong on the computer when they entered their application, we're able to resolve it. So we're very much working in a very hands-on way to be able to assist assist our constituents. The other way in which we're trying to assist people is by providing them timely information on when they can go ahead and make an appointment to be able to get their vaccine. And so, as you know, we started with those individuals who are 80 and up, along with long-term care residents and retirement home residents, and we've been working progressively down. And our Halton Public Health Unit has been a wonderful partner to work with. So part of our role is very much to provide as much timely information to constituents so that they in turn can make the decisions that will help keep them safe.
Stephen, you talked a little bit about the various work you've had to do with other levels of government, and that's really what this show is about. We'll be talking to all levels of government. Where do you see areas for greater collaboration with your colleagues at other levels?
Well, thanks, Tim. I think we do have pretty good collaboration with the Halton region, with the municipality here in Oakville, and with the federal government. I mean, I think there's always the opportunity to do better. I think certainly one of the issues of concern, I think, to many people in Ontario is, although we do have a strong supply of vaccine coming in now, we are a little later than most other countries, certainly developed countries within the G20. So we've been a little bit late on that. I think, part of this third wave we're in right now certainly is attributable to having vaccine deliveries that are perhaps 6 to 8 weeks behind most other developed countries. So I think perhaps a little bit more federal provincial collaboration on that, and certainly controlling the borders, I think, has been an issue. And we've been, Premier Ford has mentioned that for some time now, that I think we need greater collaboration. I know the provincial government actually brought in testing to Pearson Airport, which is not in federal jurisdiction, some months ago, but we need, I think, greater collaboration on that, on the borders. And I say the borders, not only the international borders, but even the interprovincial borders, which we now have on the land borders, but even the air borders. A lot of people flying in from Alberta, British Columbia, whatnot, have tested positive for COVID. And I think while we're right now in the thick of this third wave, which we're really trying to get under control, get people vaccinated, this is hopefully the sort of the end of this. I think right now, maybe we need to put some kind of pause or tougher measures in place on the borders for at least 30 days to get people vaccinated and get this under control. But having said that, as I mentioned, I think we have been working well together. And I do think, generally speaking, if we look back on this in the future, I think all levels of government in Canada have stepped up to the plate and overall, done a good job. There's always going to be little things that every government at every level can do a little better. And I certainly acknowledge that. But I think overall, Canada as a country, relative to a lot of other countries, certainly has a lot deaths per capita. Ontario has much lower cases of COVID per capita. So as bad as it seems right now, because we're in the thick of it, overall, Ontario has stood up fairly well to the rest of North America and indeed the world. And as I say, I think overall, we can always do better, working better together. We can always make improvements. But I think, generally speaking, all the levels of government here in Ontario and Canada have worked well together.
Effie, I'm going to change it up a little bit. You might be aware that one of the Chamber's advocacy priorities is the importance of digitization and its role in the economic recovery post-pandemic. What is the provincial government doing to ensure that municipalities like Oakville lead the way in a digitally and data-connected type of community?
Is this question for me, Tim?
Yes, sorry, Effie, yes.
Thanks. Well, our government recognized early on the importance of being able to have our province connected, both homes, businesses, and communities right across the province. And so in this past March budget, we invested $2.8 billion in order to achieve this. And nowhere did it become more apparent than the need to be able to do this given the COVID-19 pandemic, where people did of necessity have to stay home to be able to work. So we know that broadband is not a luxury, but a necessity now. And so we've invested $4 billion over 6 years, beginning 2019, 2020. And then in this past November budget, we're providing $500 million over 4 years through the Ontario Onwards Acceleration Fund to make government services more digitally accessible. This will also include things such as being able to obtain your driver's license renewal online, reducing red tape, simplifying policies and procedures, basically improving our government's purchasing and really creating a customer-focused public service. So these are the kinds of initiatives our government has been taking even before COVID struck. But as a result of COVID, it makes it even more compelling that we do so going forward.
Stephen, your role as Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Infrastructure, can you tell us first of all, about that role, and then also any upcoming infrastructure investments that we can expect from the province?
Yeah, Tim. So in my role in government, I am the parliamentary assistant. So I work with the Minister of Infrastructure. And the number one overwhelming issue I hear from municipalities across the province, and we have over 440 throughout the province, is broadband and the access to better broadband. There's about 700,000 households in Ontario today that don't have proper access to broadband. So this truly is an issue. When you think about the magnitude of the number of people affected by this, whether people just want to keep in touch with their loved ones, whether kids are on online school, or whether you're a business trying to compete globally, you need access to proper broadband. It even affects us here in Halton Region. There are rural parts of Halton Region that don't have proper broadband. So we've invested in the 2021 budget over $2.8 billion more in really investing in infrastructure for broadband across the province. This is the first government in Ontario to go to this extent of investing in broadband. We recognize this is essential for businesses to flourish. Imagine all the individual businesses here in Oakville that want to compete, that want to be able to connect with customers throughout the province of Ontario that may not have proper access to broadband. So broadband is absolutely the number one issue that we're dealing with in the ministry. We've committed to enhancing the investment, number one. And we also recently passed a bill 251, which also is encouraging more broadband infrastructure expansion by utilizing things like telephone poles and whatnot in order to connect communities together. So we're really excited by that. We want to work with municipalities across the province, but we believe by 2025, we can have almost everyone in Ontario connected to proper broadband. That's a goal we've set, and we're going to work hard to achieve it. And I have no doubt this will be an economic booster to the province.
You know, a lot of politicians came into their role, Stephen, as rookie members. I hope you don't mind that term. But I'm sure you came into your role with lots of ideas of what you wanted to accomplish. And of course, then the pandemic has set everything on its ear. But if we do get through, like you said, perhaps in 6 months, we're coming out to a little bit more normal life. What are some of the priorities you'd like to concentrate on? What are some things you'd like to accomplish?
Well, first, let me be absolutely clear in stating that you are correct. In terms of a lot of our objectives as a government coming in have been derailed, really. I mean, we've had 15, 16 months of COVID. So when we look back at the end of our term, it'll be well over half our term we're dealing with COVID. So certainly that's derailed some of our objectives as a government. So what would we like to do going forward? I think there's a few things. I think number one is we want to make sure Ontario retains its position as the economic engine of Canada. We really want to unleash the economic recovery. And if I go back to December 2019, our government had been in power for approximately 17, 18 months. And at that point, we were referred to as the Ontario miracle throughout North America. We had governors in the United States calling Premier Ford, what's going on in Ontario? And a lot of the policies we had put into place were starting to really take effect. It takes 12 or 18 months to really start seeing the results of your policies. And we've had a lot of red tape reduction, business friendly investment in the province, regulatory changes, which really got investment back to Ontario from throughout the world. So COVID obviously derailed that. We want to get back to that place. We want to help the skilled trades. We are investing in the skilled trades. We've set up a new Crown agency, Skills Ontario, which we were excited to announce just this last week with new legislation from the Minister of Labour, Training, Skills and Development. And we've had tremendous support, I might add, from unions across the province, from Leuna to Unifor to various businesses to open the skilled trades. We see an enormous opportunity there. So certainly getting the economy rolling again, getting business rolling again, reducing some of the burdensome regulations, as Ontario is the most over-regulated jurisdiction in the country. Obviously, we're going to need to get our debt under control. There's no doubt. We inherited a government that had the most debt in sub-national debt in the entire world. We've had to spend money, like any government in Canada and indeed throughout the world. We've had to obviously spend money through this pandemic, and I have no regrets for that because we absolutely needed to. It was a crisis. All the more reason you need to save for a rainy day. We need to get the debt under control. We need to take action to expand the green space in our province. We're currently having greenbelt consultations, which could result in the largest expansion to the history of the greenbelt in this province. So that's undergoing as we speak right now. So these are a few of our objectives. There's many more, but those are certainly a couple of the big issues I would certainly highlight.
Thank you. Effie, you also have a pretty important role as the Parliamentary Assistant to the Minister of Long-Term Care. Can you share what you've been working on, and is there anything specific to our community that you can speak to?
Thanks, Tim. Yes, you're quite right. I've been the Parliamentary Assistant for the Minister of Long-Term Care, actually, since the beginning that our government got elected. And I was new to the portfolio, and so obviously it was a very interesting time for me to understand the issues. Then, of course, COVID hit, and long-term care was really in crisis. And the Premier himself has said that we inherited a broken system, and successive governments had not invested in it. And he had committed that we, in fact, were going to fix it. And then we also had the pandemic striking. So we've worked very hard to make the proper investments we need to make in order to have a very modern system that's really what I'd call resident focused on the care and needs of the residents of long-term care. You may or may not know, but we actually have a waiting list of about 40,000 seniors who are waiting to get into long-term care. So for us, building new capacity is very much of the essence. On the positive side, after the very, very difficult first year we had with the pandemic, I can say that 95% of our long-term care residents who wanted to be vaccinated are now vaccinated. And that has actually helped a great deal in terms of minimizing the toll of deaths that we regrettably had to see through this pandemic. We've also invested about $2 billion since the beginning of the pandemic to actually protect vulnerable long-term care residents and the staff there. And this year, we actually budgeted an additional $650 million as well. The next 4 years for us will see an investment of about $2.6 billion in order to develop new spaces, new beds, and redevelop old beds. So our promise as a government when we first got elected was to build out 30,000 new beds over 10 years. Well, I can say to you today that we've already reached 2/3 of that 30,000 bed commitment. And we're also working on 15,000 plus upgraded spaces. So we've made tremendous progress on this commitment that we had made because as you know, we're an aging population. We have people that are living longer, but also living with more complex health issues. So we need to be able to have a safe, healthy environment to be able to house individuals who want to go into long-term care. I have to tell you as well that within our own community in Oakville, we will be building 2 long-term care facilities that will probably have a total of 515 beds plus. So that's going to be coming on board very shortly. The other commitment that we made, and I worked carefully with the minister, Dr. Fullerton, and also with an expert panel, was in order to deliver on a staffing plan so that we actually have staff like personal support workers and nurses be able to be trained in time to meet the growing needs. And so we now have, we've now announced that we will, over the next 4 years, be able to provide direct care to residents of an average of 4 hours of direct care every day. We're currently at 2.75 hours, and we'll be able to reach 4 hours within the next 4 years. And that is an investment of $4.9 billion to achieve that goal. So the mistakes of the past are over. Our government is committed to making these investments and ensuring that our residents, our vulnerable citizens, are actually going to get the kind of care they need and deserve.
That's great. Good news. Let's take it a little closer to home then, Effie. What are some of, in your role as MPP, what are some of the things you'd like to accomplish over the next few months?
Well, I must add, and I agree with Stephen, we have been somewhat derailed from our original goals as a government. But as you know, our number one priority continues to make sure that people are safe and the distribution of vaccines is getting into as many people as possible. So in the short term, that's very much our priority. But I also agree with Stephen that light at the end of the tunnel is there. As more and more vaccine supply comes into the province, we will also be able to get our economy reopening. I do think that Ontario is the engine of the country. And once we're unfettered by the pandemic, we will see growth in the province of Ontario like we've never seen before. So I'm very optimistic about the future of our province and our country in that respect. Personally, one of the issues that has also been of very importance to me is the environment. And I'm very much committed to protecting our green spaces. 2 weeks ago, my private member's motion was unanimously passed in the legislature for Ontario to actually call on an expansion of the green belt to protect more environmentally sensitive lands for future generations. The consultations are taking place as we speak. It was a 2-month consultation process, and we're awaiting those results. But I would like to continue very much to advocate for clean air and water, protecting our forests, our wetlands, and the watershed. We live in a very beautiful part of the province. We want to be able to sustain it for future generations so that families and other individuals can enjoy it. So for me, that's a very important priority. And I also, like Stephen, work very closely on this file. I know he's also committed to this as well.
Well, congratulations on that, because a private member's bill isn't always the easiest thing to pass. So good luck, or good for you for doing that. I want to thank you both. This has been a tough time. I mean, obviously for everybody, but I don't think any politicians ran and thought that they'd be mired in the middle of this. So thanks to you both on behalf of the business community and the residents of Oakville and Oakville North Burlington.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you to our partners, Cogeco, Bell Canada, Sheridan, and CN Rail. We appreciate your support. To our members, thank you for watching. This is our second episode of Oakville on Deck. Please join us next time when we hear from our federal representatives, Minister Anita Anand and MP Pam Damoff. Have a safe and productive day.